These are the top 5 best meta decks for the July 2023 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format. Let's jump into it. What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome to another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video. Today we are talking about the best decks in the format for July 2023. We just had the NAWCQ, and we saw so many decks appear, and some were absolutely insane, and others not so much. But today we're talking about the best of the best, which are the 5 best decks for the entire July 2023 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format. So if you're excited, then do me a favor and smash the like button, because at 60 likes, I'll bring you an amazing Dragon Link deck profile. And of course, subscribe to the channel as well to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But with that being said, guys, here are the top 5 best meta decks for July 2023 in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's jump into it. Starting off the list at number 5 is going to be Branded. And now if you guys want to call this Branded Despia or Branded Bestial, I really don't care. As long as you have Branded Fusions, Fallen of Albaz in your deck, it is branded. Period. The deck is incredibly powerful. Definitely one of the best in the room because it is incredibly recursive, has really powerful one-card combos. Having Branded Fusion resolve on its own is one of the most powerful and impactful cards you can possibly have in the game. The problem is, it has one of the biggest weaknesses in the game. That's going to be having Ash Blossom on your Branded Fusion, which is the biggest reason I can't have this higher than number 5, because the game plan is really just have Branded Fusion resolve, and if you don't, you kind of lose, to be honest. At the end of the day, the deck is incredibly recursive, can do things on your turn and on your opponent's turn, and with having access to cards like Guiding Plum the Virtuous and Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, you're in a fantastic position to just really overwhelm your opponent, not just on your turn, but on theirs as well. Having access to a searchable way to Branded Lost is incredibly powerful. Getting access to the Bestial Lubellion through your Branded Fusion is great, because then you can have that summoned to your side of the field by tributing your Albion, and then you get access to Branded Lost, which is fantastic for follow-up, because it not only gets you access to searches, but it also creates a way for you to be uninterrupted in your combos. If you're in the middle of resolving your Branded Fusion and you're being able to fuse from someone with your Albion, your Lubellion to get to your Mirror Jade in the same chain as the summon of the Mirror Jade, you are able to activate the effect of Mirror Jade and your opponent just can't respond to it, which is so incredibly powerful. Mirror Jade will get you pluses as well because you're sending the Albion, which gets you more advantage, or sending Ringrum, which can allow you for interruption if you have an Albaz in the graveyard. On top of that, Tri-Brigade Mercurier is a fantastic card to have in this deck. It is a searchable hand trap, which is really solid as a monster negation, but it also acts as an extra piece of consistency if it's banished, allowing you to search for a Fallen of Albaz related card. Just a fantastic deck all around that really doesn't have too many weaknesses. The biggest problem that I face with this deck is that the deck kind of folds to a lot of negates. If you're going up against like a Spright player who sets up a board with like Spright Red, Spright Carrot, maybe a Totally Awesome if they're still running that package, or a Rafale Justice for Hire, a board like that is really powerful because you don't really have the resources to be able to activate all your cards. Going for something like a normal summon of Albaz and then activating the effects, you have to discard a card for cost. That's 2 cards right there, which just get you 1 negate. It's really not an advantageous situation to be in at all. At the end of the day, though, there are certain ways to get around that, but if your opponent plays smart with many negates on the field, they can overwhelm the Branded player pretty easily. That's one of the biggest problems with the deck as well, at least going second. At number 4, we have Dragon Link, and specifically Bestial Dragon Link. Now, I told you guys that at 60 likes, I would bring you an amazing Dragon Link deck profile. That makes sense because it's one of the best decks of the entire format. It is right now the premier combo deck of the entire meta. That might change a little bit when Vanadium kind of sneaks back up after Duelist Nexus, but regardless, Dragon Link is absolutely incredible. Uninterrupted, it can put up one of the best boards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now with multiple Synchro monsters and powerful Link monsters like Boral End Dragon. You can get access to Boral Savage Dragon, Baron DeFleur, Bestial Despater, or even cards like Chaos Angel as well. There's so much this deck can do. The deck had a pretty good showing at this year's NAWCQ, being the 4th most represented deck in the top 64. Now, that doesn't change the fact that the deck just loses to Dark Rule no more, but it is still such a fantastic combo deck to have in the format. There are so many good 1 and 1.5 card combos that you really have to take account for when playing against this deck. If you can have a normal summon of Starly Safer, that's a fantastic way to start. Chaos Space, amazing. If you go for tuning and you mill the right card, it is amazing. And of course, having access to Quick Launch as one of the best starters in the deck as well is just incredible. There's a few different ways to play the deck. I personally prefer the engine that is basically all gas with 5 to 6 board breakers and non-engine pieces, but there's also the version that has a lot more non-engine, maybe like 9 to 12 spots versus related for non-engine. The main thing is there's so much engine to this deck, so many extenders that you have access to build your board as strong as possible, that you really want to have access to those cards. So if you're going to be playing all this non-engine, you're going to really increase the deck count, which reduces your overall consistency, which can become a bit of a problem. The reason why I rank it so high is that there are very few actual choke points in the strategy, and if your opponent does find one, let's say they manage to go for Ash Blossom on the effect of your Striker Dragon, you have ways to continue playing without access to the Boot Sector launch. If they want to go for Ogre on the effect of Dragon Ravine, you still have ways around that. It's hard to play, but it is still definitely possible depending on how good your hand is. With the Bestial cards, you now have ways to get access to cards like Branded Regained and Branded Beast, which give you interruption on your opponent's turn and allow you to recur cards from the banish zone. But this also is good because it allows you to play through at least a little bit Dark Ruler No More, which is the biggest problem of the deck. The deck just spits out boss monsters like it's nobody's business, but the main issue is once those boss monsters are out of the extra deck, it's really hard to get them back in there. So the grind game for this deck is pretty challenging unless you rip that like one miracle card off the top of your deck. But you really do go through a lot of your extra deck on your turn 1 combo, so losing that can be very difficult to maintain a successful game plan towards the end of a long game. And at number 3, we have Labrynth, which is the premier trap deck of the format. The main combo for this deck is just set 5 back row and pass, or how quickly can I get to Eradicator Epidemic Virus or Deck Devastation Virus to win a game in games 2 and 3. Yeah, it's really hard to beat this deck when they open up their full combo if you don't have the right cards in your hand. One of the biggest things going for the deck though is that because it's a trap based deck, it's really rare to see an opponent come prepared in the main deck for trap matchups. Maybe they have the spare evenly matched there, but it's unlikely they're going to have their Harpy's Feather Duster, or their Cosmic Cyclones, or Twin Twisters in the main deck to deal with them because they're just not as good as against other strategies. So that being said, you have a pretty big advantage if you end up going first and winning the die roll. Now, if you lose the die roll, it's really hard to beat an established Dragon Link or Vanadium or Kashtira board with your just trap cards that have to be waited a turn until they can be activated. So you do have some weaknesses, but the deck going first is really strong and almost unbeatable in my mind. It's really easy to get access to your big boss monsters of the deck because you have access to all the trap cards, the big Welcome Labrynth and the Welcome Labrynth. Also, you have ways to get to them through the furniture cards like Labrynth Stovey Torby or Labrynth Shine Dragleer. You can also just draw them through cards like Pot of Extravagance. There's so many ways to get access to these cards to be able to set up for an amazing turn 1 that you really don't need to worry about how good your opening hand is because it can just get better throughout the entire game. Now, when you do get access to Lady Labrynth and Lovely Labrynth, you have a really good way to control the game, but also extend your plays further by searching for more trap cards, and you can also protect them as well, which is incredibly valuable. Now, that being said, if you just find yourself in a bad situation, just flip Skill Drain and you can win the game that way because you don't really care about effects on the field outside of maybe Ariane, your Searcher. One of the problems with this deck is that you really want to end up going first, and if you just can't win the die roll, then it's a really uphill battle to win game 1. And games 2 and 3, winning both those games with the side deck in play is very difficult. When you get to a tournament, everyone is ready for back row decks. You have cards like Cosmic Cyclone, Twin Twister, Evenly Matched, or even Harpy's Feather Duster that are really hard to beat with this deck over here. I have a lot of respect for the deck, but is it a top 2 strategy right now? Not really, and the reason I say that is because after the results from the top 64 of the NAWCQ, we saw that only 2 Labrynth decks made it to top 64, and none of them made it past top 32, which is a pretty big problem when you're looking at the larger competitive format, because there are so many good decks that made it that far, and if Labrynth can't make it, then why does it deserve to be in the top 2? Now, before we jump into the top 2, I want to remind you guys to leave a like on the video if you're enjoying it so far. Also, did you guys know that only 5% of my viewers are subscribed to the channel? So if you guys are enjoying the video, then make sure to subscribe as well. At number 2, we have Runick Sprights. Now, this could be pretty much any Runick Spright variant you want. If you want to play Melfi, you want to play Live Twin, you want to play Fur Hire, you want to play Pure, I don't mind. But how I would rank those 4 decks right now would be definitely number 1 is Fur Hire, then it would be Pure, then it would be Live Twin, and then it would be Melfi in my mind. And if you want to disagree with that, go ahead. This isn't that type of video. Regardless, the deck is fantastic. Having access to the Sprite engine to be able to build a really strong board, create powerful consistency pieces, and get access to really good materials on the field is great. On top of that, the Runick cards are just so fantastic in this format. Being able to banish cards from your opponent's deck is really strong. Getting access to powerful interruption pieces on both your turn and your opponent's turn is great. And of course, a card like Runick Fountain is just absolutely insane, not only to recur your resources, but to get you more card advantage. It's just absolutely nuts how good that card is. The deck has a lot of really powerful 1 and 1.5 card combos because of cards like Sprite Blue, and of course the best card in the Fur Hire variant being Rex Freight for Hire, which gets you access to Rookie for Hire, which can be absolutely devastating to get the ball rolling. The Fur Hire engine gets you access to cards like Folgo, which is a fantastic Link 3, getting you access to the chance to draw up to 3 cards, which is amazing to draw into more Runick cards or even more interruptions on your opponent's turn. On top of that, Rafali Justice for Hire is a fantastic negation tool as long as you have a Fur Hire card to discard, which is a really critical piece of interaction to have. You also have access to Dawn Puff for pops on your opponent's turn, and you also have access to Spright Red and Spright Carrot for monster and spell and trap negations respectively, which is really good if you're worried about cards like maybe Nibiru or cards like Evenly Match in the meta. The deck is fantastic, but there is so much engine taking up space in the deck. You have basically 35 cards for the Runick Spright and for a higher deck portion, and that leaves only about 5 spots for non-engine, and that's whatever board breakers you really want. So that makes it really tough to side appropriately and to build appropriately as well. The good news is, all those cards, all these engines, do a really good job of breaking boards and forcing negations out, which is really strong to be able to break those boards in the long run. The deck has amazing draw power, a lot of consistency, and the ability to overwhelm your opponent and just pure card advantage pretty easily. And the deck that once lost to Dark Ruler No More doesn't really do that because you have access to the Runick cards to supplement that, and they're in your hand. The deck also had pretty good representation at the NAWCQ, with the top 64 having 12 Spright variants, and 8 of those variants ended up having Spright Runick, which is obviously great for this list. Now here we are at number 1, the best deck of the format. What's it going to be? You know what it is. It's Kashtira. Kashtira is, in my opinion, by far the best deck of the format. I think it is really just Kashtira on its own and then everything else. The deck is fantastic. 21 of the top 64 were Kashtira, 9 of the top 16, 6 of the top 8, and all 4 of the top 4 were Kashtira. The deck just is so overwhelming. The deck can win in so many different ways, including a control strategy by having the Shangri Era block out zones, the Arise Heart by banishing basically every card there is, but also having access to burst to just keep bringing back more materials for you to use. You also have a really aggressive strategy that can focus on OTKing by using just your regular big main deck monsters. Kashtira Ogre, Unicorn, Fenrir, and then any one of Scareclaw or Rise Heart rather I should say, is just 8,000 life points right away on 4 summons. So you can do basically anything you really need to with the deck and have access to an OTK without having to worry about Nibiru, and that's crazy. It has a lot of flex spots for powerful hand traps and board breakers, including one of the best cards in the deck for it being Dimension Shifter. Not a lot of decks can play under D-Shifter, and having Kashtira as the best deck of the room, and then also having D-Shifter on top of that is absolutely insane. Basically every single card in Kashtira either trades for a card that your opponent controls, or even searches a card for you, or it does both of those things, which is absolutely incredible. The main issue that I have with Kashtira is that it is really possible to brick. If you open cards like Theosis and Birth and no way to get access to Kashtira monsters, then it's really hard to play the game. You just have to pass and hope your non-engine can carry you for another turn. That being said, the deck is at the very worst a top 2 deck in the format, but in my opinion, it is clearly the number 1 deck in the room. So I want you guys to let me know, is Kashtira the best deck for you as well? I would love to hear in the comments. And there you have it, the top 5 best meta decks for the July 2023 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format. There are a ton of amazing decks, but these were the 5 best ones. And if you guys enjoyed this video, then do me a favor and smash the like button, because at 60 likes, I'll bring you an amazing Dragon Link deck profile. Also, be sure to comment what your favorite deck of these top 5 are in the comments below, and I'll read and react to every single one of them. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Only 5% of my viewers are actually subbed to the channel. If you guys want to help us reach our end of year goal of 1,000 subs, then we're definitely have to bump that number up. That being said, I want to thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.